Hello, everyone. Welcome to GRID Live Pre-Race. Joe Sammiego here, along with Isha Azim from Racing with Isha and Jackson Todd from 36xracing.com. A big thank you to our investors through Patreon, Colin, the show, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew. They've been investing in us pretty much from the very beginning. We encourage everyone to invest in us, help us continue to expand this network media outlet. And of course, you can do buy me coffee or super chat. We'll update it as Matthew did buy us another cup. So we got someone that has done multiple cups. If you want your name, you could do that, or the YouTube super chat. If we see it on the air, we'll thank you. And of course, the simplest way to support us, hit the bell icon, subscribe to us right here on YouTube. A big thank you to everyone for making it possible for us to hit 1,000 subscribers earlier this week. Check out Grid Tonight from this week, the first episode where we were on the air after 1,000 subscribers, and many more ahead. Interesting race weekend, Isha. World Rally, they're already underway. Formula E, we're going to recap. So we're going to do the one preview we have for this show, the NASCAR Cup Series at Richmond.
That's right, Joe. Starting the show off with NASCAR, the Richmond Raceway is back, and many are curious about how the racing will be. Now, in the last couple of years, the racing action has been more spread out with few cautions, so this means qualifying and pit stops will be key for staying ahead of the competition. Now, Jackson, Joe, do you guys anticipate an improved racing product that traditionally lives up to the short track expectations?
The last time we kind of had this question was before the Bristol race, before all the tires started exploding. I don't think we're going to go that direction. But I mean, I'm not sure. I feel like the Phoenix race wasn't awful. That's kind of the most comparable thing we have heading into this weekend. And yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of still waiting to see how the short track package shakes out. This is going to be, the second test, and it's at Richmond, which is, kind of a more standard oval compared to Phoenix with the dog leg. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with this racetrack. One of the big things the last few years, I've sort of been a fan of the racing, just seeing how strategy was coming in a little bit more. Tire wear, when we saw William Byron, looked like he was going to have an easy win. Then the tires gave way, lost the race. So overall, I think it's going to be really interesting to see if we still get a little bit of that tire wear. If the field gets spread out, so the strategies will come in. If we could see more passing here or there, I think everyone will say that is an improvement of what we had, because a lot of folks enjoy the side-by-side racing, the beating and banging that we anticipate with these short tracks. The last few years at Richmond, particularly with this car, hasn't exactly lived up, but for me, I feel like still been overall a good product.
That's right. And now, one noticeable change for Richmond is the Sunday evening event under the lights. Now, it has been a while since we've seen Richmond hold a race at night. This means the track conditions are going to be more cool and have a better grip. So, we still have the mystery of the Bristol tire mess that some believe it was because the temperature was never about 68 degrees. Now, the temperature is expected to drop to 68, but that's not going to be the track temperature. So, Joe, do you anticipate the issues from Bristol to show up here as well?
I don't think not to the level we saw at Bristol. Tire wear, we have seen it occur here, as I mentioned with William Byron, the way he had the race pretty much won, but then the tires started giving away. He lost the race. I think that's a big thing people are going to be watching for. But as what we saw at Bristol, I don't think this is something from Goodyear, because they said this was the same tire they had used the year before at Bristol. People thought, well, maybe they something with the chemicals in making the tires. I really think is what Denny Hamlin said about the tire temperature and the track temperature, the air temperature, just not getting to that point. So it's going to be really interesting. I don't anticipate we're going to see the kind of issues like we did at Bristol. But I think a lot of folks are going to be paying attention to practice qualifying and see how it all shapes up.
Yeah, I don't expect similar tire issues to Bristol. That was a pretty unique circumstance, I would say. But yeah, Richmond, this should be, I feel like, kind of a more of a normal operation. Some tire wear in there, but not like what we saw in Bristol.
Now, speaking of Bristol, Denny Hamlin won at Bristol and he leads all active drivers with poles here. Denny has 3 poles here. The second is Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano with 2 each. However, Kyle Busch leads all drivers with 6 wins ahead of Hamlin with 4, Truex with 3, and Kyle Larson with Keselowski and Logano at 2 wins. Now, Buescher and Bowman each have 1 race win. So, Jackson, out of the past winners, who stands out as a favorite to you?
I mean, if I have to pick one, it feels like a Chris Buescher kind of weekend. It feels like this might be his time for Ford and RFK to get back up there. But I mean, really, I mean, most of the names on that list, with maybe the exception of like Kyle Busch, will likely be in the picture tomorrow.
I have to agree. I feel Kyle Busch, that team is not exactly delivering on great race pace results. I just don't see them moving up. I'm leaning towards the Toyotas, particularly Denny Hamlin, of course. But Ty Gibbs, the way he's been running, I would not be surprised if he could end up in victory lane this weekend at Richmond.
Yeah, good picks, guys. Now, while many are looking at past winners, DraftKings had some drivers who had yet to win near the top as of this morning. Christopher Bell was tied with Denny Hamlin at plus 500, Ty Gibbs at plus 900, and William Byron at plus 1100. So, Joe, do we think we're more likely to see a repeat winner at Richmond or someone win their first race here on this track?
That's a really hard question. I think I'm leaning towards the idea we're going to have somebody that wins here for the first time at Richmond Raceway. Qualifying is going to be the big thing, though. I think that's going to be the big indicator to see if that hypothesis will hold up. Because if Christopher Bell, Ty Gibbs, if they're both in the top 10, I think those are easy picks to be potentially the drivers to go out there, get a win for the first time at Richmond. If we have qualifying, but you see again the past winners all towards the front, and you don't see any of the drivers that have won in the top 10 really, then I think it's going to be a little bit harder for somebody outside the top 10 to get a win here, especially if they haven't done it before.
I think the name at the top of the list of the non-winners, someone that would be a new winner, would be a Ty Gibbs. And although he's had a great season, I don't quite see him crossing over that hump yet. I don't think it's going to happen this week. So I would expect a usual suspect, a repeat winner this week.
All right, now here's your friendly reminder to keep it fun and responsible if you're placing bets. But now taking a look at some of the teams, so Joe Gibbs Racing leads all teams with 18 wins here and Hendrick has 12. However, Chevrolet leads the manufacturers with 40 wins over Ford at 35 and Toyota at 16. Now Ford is winless in the Cup Series this year and they have the new Dark Horse Mustang. So Jackson, does Ford look at this race carefully with how they stack with the competition and aero package for the weekend?
I mean, yeah, Ford is not having a good time in 2024. Essentially, you go Blaney, you go Buescher, and then it's kind of the field after that. Brad Keselowski's at 16th would be the third Ford in the playoff field right now. Back at Phoenix, they didn't look bad, which is the most comparable thing we have going into this weekend. Toyotas had the speed on the long run at Phoenix, but the Fords were still up there. The only time this year they've had 5 cars finish in the top 10 was at that Phoenix race. So I think they really have to pounce this weekend. A Ford has to win, and if they don't, they're going to really be behind. I mean, they're already behind, only having 3 cars in the playoff field, but not being able to capitalize this weekend. I mean, it would be pretty bad.
I'll have to agree. I think it'll be really bad if Ford does not come off with a win this weekend because the questions are going to be coming up. What's going on with the Ford teams, the new car, and overall, Chevrolet, Toyotas. If Toyota gets a win today, I especially feel that's going to add more pressure because now people are going to be comparing. Okay, Chevrolet, they have all these wins. Toyota are racking up the wins. Where's Ford? And that's why I think it's going to really come down to is how will Ford do. Phoenix was a good indication that they could be up there. So I think a lot of folks are going to be going in anticipating Ford to have a better race weekend. It's just going to be a matter of how the race plays out. But I got to agree with Jackson, too, that it looks like it's going to be Blaney, Buescher, everybody else. Maybe Keselowski. He just seems to be sometimes really hit or miss on the weekends.
All right, now taking a look at one specific driver, Chase Elliott has the fifth best average finish position at Richmond. Winless and surprisingly, only one top 10 finish this year. Now, every other race has been at least a top 20, but only 8 at Bristol are in the top 10. So, Joe, if Chase continues this consistency and stays in the top 10 points, can this keep his fans happy and not call for a new crew chief like in the past?
Oh, that's hard just because we know Chase Elliott fans, if Chase is not winning, they're wanting answers. So if he is consistent all year long and comfortably in the top 10 of points, I think they'll be content where they know he has a fast car. He just needs to break through the win barrier and then he can start racking wins with that momentum. But always feel this team, Alan Gusson, the crew chief, they always just seems to have that little bit of pressure because they know a mistake that prevents a win. People are going to be calling NASCAR radio on XSM or posting on social media that a change is needed. Frankly, I think Chase Elliott and that team, regardless if they get in the playoffs or not, they need to start getting some race wins. You can't have the most popular driver winless for another season and anticipate no changes because they have the good equipment. They got the teammates there that could really help the entire organization with data. It can't be the winless one, and especially when Alex Bowman has lately been performing really well, and we're all wondering where's Chase Elliott.
Yeah, I think Elliott's having a fine year. I was actually really surprised that he only has one top 10, but he's racked up a lot of stage points throughout here, and that's what has him like high enough in the standings. He's not winning like Larson or Byron, and he's kind of. It's interesting to see him be the number 3 driver. Byron just kind of like slipped in and got past him. So I have to think and assume he'll win at some point this year, but yeah, he's going to need to start like filling that playoff point bucket because the wins, those chunks of 5 points, those are huge, and he's not quite running at the elite level enough to just rely on the regular season bonus. Like he's going to need wins to push through the playoffs, and yeah, I mean the whole Hendrick boat is looking really good right now, but yeah, Chase needs to win.
All right, now with that music, you know it's time for the lightning round for NASCAR. So, Jackson, we'll start with you for this first question. Michael McDowell has 25 starts here without the win, one behind AJ Allmendinger, who has the record 26 starts without a win. Is McDowell bound to tie Allmendinger? What do you think?
Yeah, I would say yes. I do not have McDowell on my list of possible winners for tomorrow.
Yeah, Michael McDowell, I don't see him as a winner tomorrow. He's going to tie AJ Allmendinger for 26 starts without a win.
All right, Joe, back to you. Josh Berry had his best finish here last year. Can he be the upset winner?
I just don't see that happening. Stewart Haas Racing, they could have a fast car like they did at Bristol for him, and he could really show his skills, but I think the competition's too tough for Josh Berry to get his first win.
Yeah, I think a Josh Berry solid day would be a top 10. I think that would be great, but the usual suspects, I think, are who we're going to see win this week.
All right, Jackson. Ross Chastain has one top 5 and one top 10. After 10 races, do you think he'll have a top 5, a top 10, or neither this weekend?
As I was kind of prepping the show notes, I was sitting here thinking, okay, he's going to get a top 10, but they did not look good in this practice session I ran this morning, so I do not think a top 10 is in the cards for Ross Chastain.
I think it's going to be a quiet weekend unless he makes contact with somebody. Ross Chastain, not in the top 10.
All right, Joe. Daniel Hemrick started with 3 top 20 finishes, but in his last 3 races, he has finished outside the top 20. Will he rebound this weekend?
I don't see that team rebounding. I think they're not in a good spot overall. I think it's going to be another finish outside the top 20 for Hemrick.
Yeah, Hemrick and Colleague definitely struggling. I think outside the top 20 for sure. I mean, especially if we're talking about expecting good days from the Fords, or we're expecting a good day from SHR. Those are teams that, kind of float around that mid-pack mark, and that's going to knock Colleague down a few spots this week.
All right, Jackson, back to you. Who do you think finishes ahead, Martin Truex Jr. or Ty Gibbs?
I feel like this is a really tough choice this week. I think I'm going with Martin Truex Jr. just because of his veteran savvy. I think Ty Gibbs. I'm just waiting for a little bit more before I can start putting him up above that mark.
I'm gonna go the opposite. I'm going Ty Gibbs. I think he could pull it off at this track, but Truex is not going to be far behind.
All right, and here is the final question of our lightning round, Joe. Since 2018, only one race has had more than 5 cautions. Do we see 5 or fewer cautions at Richmond, or 6 or more?
I'm going 5 or less.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think 5 or less is what we're going to see tomorrow.
All right, now that's all for our lightning round. The NASCAR Cup Series Toyota Owners 400 is going to be at 7 p.m. Eastern Time and 4 p.m. Pacific. So GRID Encore will recap the NASCAR race weekend at Richmond. Now let us turn towards the Tokyo E-Prix ABB Formula E race. So, qualifying had 8 different teams in the top 8, 5 different powertrains, and now 5 different winners in Formula E this season. Maximilian Gunther took his first win of 2024, and it was Maserati's first win of this year. So, Joe, how impressive was his win in the inaugural Tokyo E-Prix?
Very impressive, especially since a lot of folks did not see this coming. He's been quietly up towards the front all season long, scoring points. That's the big thing. And a lot of folks were wondering what's going on with this team after last year, where their longtime driver, Eduardo Montoya, could not get into victory lane. It has switched over to Maserati from the old Venturi team. So a lot of folks were just really surprised to see that he was able to get to the second spot. Of course, his teammate, rookie, and not up there. The way this race worked out, though, he was just patiently there, third place most of the race, waiting for that opportunity to get around Eduardo Montoya in the Mahindra. Once that opportunity came around, he again just continued to just follow Oliver Rowland, saving the energy. So when Oliver Rowland got to the point where his energy was becoming an issue because he was leading most of the race, he let Maximilian Gunther around, and Max Gunther got the win. Very exciting last lap. Oliver Rowland did a couple of moves, but he just did not have the energy levels to really send it, because by the time they crossed the finish line, they were just about at 0.01 energy. Overall, very impressive win. I think this really shows the potential Max Gunther has with this team and potential championship contenders. They've been quiet, but now I think they're going to start making more noise, and definitely they're on everyone's radar now.
That's right, Joe. And you mentioned Oliver Rowland. So he is the man who came in home second and led most of the race. After the race, he said that the safety car ruined his race strategy. He had to conserve more energy and was overtaken by Max. Now, Joe, how did the safety car put Oliver Rowland's race at a disadvantage?
The big thing was with the safety car, it closed up the gap on everyone. So, of course, you didn't have to advantage. But as we've been seeing more and more, it's been more of this what they're calling Peloton racing. A lot of folks call it pack racing here in the United States. It wasn't as big of a pack like you had in Portland, where because of the wide nature of that track, the flowing nature of that track, you had what looked like something from Talladega or Daytona. Here, it was much more narrow. You had these tighter corners, so the field did get spread out. But you still saw the first, I believe, 6 cars sort of bumper to bumper, not exactly going for the moves, besides Antonio Felix da Costa. So Oliver Rowland was just using his energy, being the first person to get the clean air, essentially pushing more air while the drivers behind could just draft and save energy. Safety car comes out. Next thing you know, with the safety car, Formula E has a rule, depending on how long, there'll be extra laps added on. So this just ruined them, where they were anticipating to just do the full 33 laps. Now they had to do 35 laps. They really had to save energy. So I think overall, the Nissan team, they have to feel pretty proud that their strategy was looking pretty good until the caution came out for debris on the track. We've had, I believe it was Jake Hughes, we had Mitch Evans, I think even Sam Bird at 1.6 drivers making contact, debris. Here comes the caution. That just wiped out his chances of winning, especially when he had to try to get around Max Gunther because he had less energy compared to Max. And it was just, I think, game over. He just knew, hey, if I could bring it home second place for Nissan in front of their home crowd in Japan, Tokyo, that would be a good day. So, wow, a win would have been great. I think Oliver Roll, as he said in the post race show, he just knew his race was essentially compromised. Just bring it home with a podium, and he climbed up the points quite well.
Yeah, definitely. And now, if we take a look at another team who was hopeful for a better result, we have Jaguar. So, Jaguar saw Nick Cassidy start way in the back, not a factor for points most of the race. His teammate Mitch Evans crashed into the wall and was out of contention. James Barclay was unhappy as the team's 100 race weekend did not go as planned. So, Joe, are you surprised by how upset James was and what occurred in the Jaguar garage?
I was very surprised because this is their 100th race, something worth celebrating about. A little bit of a special paint job too with the number 100. And overall, this race weekend just did not go well for them. I mean, granted, the point standings, especially the team standings, Jaguar is still ahead. But I was just surprised that apparently in the garage area during the race, after Mitch Evans had crashed out, James was visibly upset. And at the end, to the point where the Formula E team, the coverage team, broke away from the racing action to report from pit road about the upset nature at Jaguar Racing. It really started got me thinking the pressure is building up on that team. They're leading the team's championships. Nick Cassidy, now after this brutal weekend, he is second in the points, and then Mitch Evans fell down to sixth in the points. And we know Formula E is so competitive that any advantage you have, especially up in the track racing, staying ahead of everyone, is the best you could do, and as long as possible, because just the nature of this series, we're going to Rome. It's brand new track, doubleheader weekend. If you're off strong, let's put everything behind. But if you're out there struggling and you see Porsche and they're up towards the front, Audi, potentially Nissan again, because Nissan, Oliver Rowe, 3 consecutive podiums now. I think you're going to see some issues with Jaguar as that pressure keeps building up. And this is going to be really interesting to see what happens to Mitch Evans. I've said in the beginning, Mitch Evans just seems every year he starts off the season pretty slow, a crash here or there, and then the second half of the year is when he starts rebounding with great points. This year was pretty good, and then he has this mistake. Nick Cassidy had podium after podium, a win. This race weekend, nothing. He was lucky. I mean, especially if Eduardo Montoya did not get disqualified, I think he would be lower in the points, potentially out of the points picture too. That safety car period really did help him. So I think for Jaguar, this was just an absolutely dreadful weekend they want to forget about. And overall, the pressure I think might be building up to win a championship because at the end of the day, 100 races, no drivers' championship, no team champion to show. That's sending the wrong message.
Yeah, that's right, Joe. And as you mentioned, 2 weeks from now, the Misano E-Prix will be in Italy. It's going to be the second doubleheader of the year. And before we continue on to the next section, I believe we have a comment in the chat room. So Adam says, Joe, what's your take on Lola coming into Formula E next season?
That's pretty exciting to hear Lola is coming back into motorsports, especially major motorsports like Formula E. Hopefully, we can see more Lola to compete with Dallara for chassis. A lot of old time fans will remember how IndyCar we used to have Lola, Reynard, Dallara. If we could have more chassis, that's a big win for the competition in motorsports and for the teams because now they have another supplier to choose from.
All right, now that is all for Formula E for today's show. Joe, let's talk about the World Rally Championship.
Yeah, World Rally Championship, Safari Rally Kenya, and they had just wrapped up Saturday stages about an hour and a half ago. To no surprise, Kali Rovanpera, who's running part time, has a 2-second lead over his teammate Takamoto Kasuta over in Toyota Gazoo Racing. Adrian Forme is in third place in his Ford, about 3 seconds behind. Thierry Neuville, a lot of folks were looking at him, the points leader, one of the favorites that's always fast. A tire puncture, lost about 2 minutes replacing that tire. He is now 11 seconds behind the leader. Very interesting, though. Traditionally, this means he'll be looking at only a few points for fourth place. But we now have this new point system where at the end, Thierry Neuville, he could still score up to 20 points tomorrow. Collier Rivera has secured 18 points this weekend already. So tomorrow we have 6 stages to end Rally Kenya. We'll recap it on Grid Live Wrap Up. And it'll be really interesting to see how the points shape up, because at the end with World Rally Championship, the point system is not by where you finish at the end, is how much points you accumulate throughout the weekend from each day. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. And speaking about accumulating points, we'll bring in Jackson for Pick a Winner.
All right, so this is the final chance to pick a winner in March. We have our monthly competitions this year. Josh P from Twitter is leading the March monthly challenge leaderboard. 4 correct picks in the month of March. Of course, if you are the top monthly win picker, you get some grid stickers sent to you. Joins Adam as the second monthly pick a winner. So Monday, the picks will be reset for April. But in our season-long contest, Matthew is still on top of the leaderboard. On today's show, we will just be picking NASCAR. Isha, you are up first.
So I'm going to pick the man who DraftKings has at plus 500. I'm going to go with Denny Hamlin.
I'm going to go with the driver getting his first win at Richmond and first of his career, Ty Gibbs. I think he's going to get the job done.
Really? All right, I've been trying to decide between two basically the whole time we've been sitting here, and I've settled on maybe a left field pick, but I'm going to go for Joey Logano as my Richmond race winner.
Wow.
Thank you, everybody, for playing Pick a Winner. In the chat, we have Adam picking Denny Hamlin, another solid favorite that should be up there in the picture.
Denny Hamlin, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with the NASCAR Cup Series. And a friendly reminder to everybody, Grid Encore on Monday is going to recap the Richmond Toyota Owners 400 NASCAR Cup Series race due to the late start time. We will still recap World Rally Championships Safari Rally Kenya tomorrow on Grid Life Wrap Up. Formula E, we wrapped it up today. So interesting weekend, but definitely the best way to follow everything. Subscribe to us right here on the Grid Network. Hit the bell icon. Don't miss any of our programs. And of course, consider investing in us through Patreon. Your support means the world to us. It's help us continue to grow, help us get folks to the racetrack. You contribute $10 or more, you're going to get some Grid Network stickers sent out to you. And the same if you do buy me a coffee or YouTube super chat, $10 or more, and you'll get some stickers mailed out. So busy race weekend around the world and for us here at the Grid Network. For Isha and Jackson, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time and enjoy the races.